Creating space with screens. I've been in the business a long time, both in linear media and in interactive media. And I've worked a lot. My roots were in Hollywood, in film and television. So when I look at interactive experiences that we try to build, I look at them to make it as rich as possible, what I call rich media. And I'll show you examples, you'll get a sense of what that is. But I'm known in our company for pushing for that because that's what the audience wants. I believe that. So a keyword, I've got some keywords as we go through here. The first one I want to talk about is about context. Because when I'm finished with this presentation, you may indeed ask yourself, why is this guy here talking? He's not a web designer. But basically, I've thought a lot about, and I want to talk in this session, about the context of marketing. And in fact, a lot of the work that I'm doing with one of my divisions in the company is actually not marketing at all, necessarily. And we do work, for example, with television. We did FreeSat here in UK. FreeSat, their product UI for their service. So we're inside their product. But the context for all that's going on is what's important to me. What is the context of marketing and the space? And how is that changing the way we look at content and marketing? So a little bit of history. I made this chart some years ago, maybe 10 years ago, and I thought it was a way of showing historically how the audience, who's the orange dot there, how we approach digital media on screens, screens being the primary source of digital media. So I thought, well, before that we had print, and then there was photography, then there's film and video. And that image that we see out there starts to be perceived as a space and as a motion place, as like a place we're looking at. And then you had big screens like IMAX, for example, they're huge, big giant screens. But there's a point where we went from passive media to interactive media. So it's conceptually, we reach our hand through there. But what I've thought about is that rectangle. I mean, design and screens are primarily rectangles. So we've lived as a designer with this rectangle with stuff in it. So, and I thought to myself, well, years ago, back in the 80s, I experienced virtual reality. I thought, is there a point where we'll move through this? Do we have holographic things? Is that where we'll go? But more recently, I've got a new element at the bottom, which is around sort of stereo 3D and other ideas. But if you look at the stuff there, what it's actually doing is it's taking this stuff out and creating an actual space. And then when you look at augmented reality, which is a possibility, I'll show some things that are happening in AR, that becomes a situation where we're actually in a space, and does that screen kind of go away down there, possibly? We're actually interacting with one device and another device. So that territory right in there is the one where my career has been, as well as down below, and I'm going to talk a lot about that last one right down there as well. So just a little bit about me so you know where I'm coming from. I started as a graphic designer, which kind of maps on that chart I had there. I went to motion graphics, a lot of that in Hollywood, branding work for television and advertising in Hollywood. And then to interaction design. So. And I would say that the devices, and I'm a good match for the conversation about Sitecore, about multiple devices, multiplicity of channels. Most of my work was in television, but that even the television world, you can't talk about television today without talking about the computer, mobile, tablet, public screens, and even automobile. I mean, how many of us have screens in our cars sometimes with the kids that watch in the back seat? So basically, television is a quite broader statement than it was years ago. But it is the core where I come from. So in the discussion about space, there are really kind of three spaces. That middle thing is the screen. There's stuff on the surface of the screen. I'll show you that in a second. There's stuff that's through the screen. I call it the content space. So it really is a space. It's a live action scene. If you're watching a game that's televised, I'm pointing at the arena out here, but if we watch that, there's something real. There's the real space we're looking at that's seen on our flat screen. It looks like a space. This new territory is one that I want to bring up towards the end, and that's this interaction space, which I think is a very interesting one. And from my standpoint as a designer, the design lives in one of those three, or all of those spaces. Surface space, for example, I'll start with the surface space, which is an obvious one. When you watch TV, you see that sort of stuff on the surface there, which is information, news information, sports information, looks like that. So it's very common. We did some work with Bungie, and we've been moving into the game world. So it's like you're seeing here, there's like a dashboard of stuff that's kind of stuck to the screen, but there's some other stuff that's actually through the screen. So it's kind of both. So moving to the content space, the distant one that's through the screen, one of the things we do a lot of in television is actually push back the image when there's going to be something interactive. So let me show what that looks like. So basically, you sort of push it back to create a space. So here's an example of that. This was some foundational work we did with Fox Sports in the United States. And during American football, unlike football here, actually has a lot of stop and go. There's a lot of stalls in play. So during those times, we would push the video back and introduce information. So this was a branded information space for the televisions. And this was not interactive, but we were actually hearkening to what could be interactive. Another example of this was we said, well, if there's a sponsor for this, it was Honda, we could actually, in a moment, push back, and that became a branded space. We're creating space by moving the video back. It's a very simple idea, but we use it quite a bit. Also, to introduce interactive elements. We've done a lot of work with interactive television and things where you can bring in menus, bring in other things. So it does that by that kind of activity. But it also means spatial direction. So this was some work done some years ago for Universal Home Media. This was the opening title for Michael Mann's movie, the Miami Vice, by Michael Mann. And here that this is the boot up experience, but as we move through, we're seeing the title, but then there's a sort of space that we reveal that's really giving us a glimpse of all of the enhanced content that's in this. So we see all that, push in, and then also we end up with a new kind of menu system. It's actually laid out up, down, left, right, which, by the way, for a TV audience, maps directly to how you think of it. It's that sort of spatial orientation to those directions and giving them meaning. So that's the whole system was based on this. One system did this, the first 10,000 pressings, and we tested it, and it tested very well, actually. So it's that idea. So this is what it would be like. You would maybe press the menu, would push back, and if we wanted to go down the timeline, you hit the down arrow, and it goes back and gives you some timeline stuff. So that's the way that worked. And then we also have used a lot of left, right, and navigation. This is a television product, Vongo in the United States, which is a movie download service. It was at the time a movie download service. We had done the web version, and this is a Windows Media Center version of it that would be moving that to television. But notice how it's very fluid. It creates a space. But I always point out on here that that's the whole application. It's all there. So it's one place which you navigate kind of left and right and open up things. So we're now kind of in the left browse area. The middle area you're seeing over there is an ongoing trailer that you're playing. I'm going to scrub across here, and if you moved across that traverse with your remote control, it would just open up the right, which is, because it's a download service, that's your management area. You're managing the things that you've downloaded. You can view them, get information on them, or look at disk space, things like that. So, but that really is trying to take this idea of a single space, which is an application. Then in terms of left and right, we've just recently completed what's been launched. It's the next generation of FreeSats interface called FreeTime. So the main guide, actually, you were starting out with sort of now, next. We're transitioning now to time. But if we hit the left arrow, we actually go left. We go left more by days. So you can actually go to the left, which in this particular market, going left in the past in time is catch-up. So we want to connect to the player. So you click an item, you're taken to this was an ITV, so we click directly to the ITV player. So, but that sense of going through time as left and right, again, as a spatial idea. Taking that idea into games. Some very interesting work in 2007 out of the LA office for for EA Sports, kind of rebranding the experience of how you turn, this is the boot up experience, booting up the game, which became a space. So they had already designed this kind of, this is for NBA, there was this glorious, they call it the temple of basketball. So it was like this 3D space you can move around in. But notice some interesting things there. It actually has, this particular year, they were introducing, in the game space, they introduced things from the real world of ESPN. So after we've seen some of this combination of promos and a ticker from ESPN, it collapses down. And when you navigated this system, to the left is the game world, kind of virtual one, and on the right was a menu system to access the television content. So you've kind of taken that world and dividing it to left and right. So, and also placing interface into 3D space. Some of this is pretty wild. I mean, I've thought sometimes, would a TV audience sitting on their couch want this? Probably not, maybe it's a little bit too much. But for a game audience, this was terrific. So this is the case of moving to the right and accessing kind of a little guide in there to bring up and take with you this sort of hybrid space now where we actually have a live game, while we're doing something else. And I'll address that later, this idea of hybrid and multiple activities going on by the audience. In that Miami Vice disk version, we said that you could freeze a scene once in a while, not every place, but freeze it and look at the characters in there, click on that. But what's going on here is if we click on Jamie Foxx, this is the stuff from his website. So what's happening is it's starting to beg the thing is, what is the web? What is a website anymore? This is taking and reorganizing this stuff from his website so that it will work with up, down, left, right, which isn't so good directly from the web page. So we're starting to think about things like this where the design is spatially done for both the web and for television, and they can move directly between the two. The notion of interacting on your TV is a new concept, but it is growing, so in my opinion. So in looking at the space idea again, a really interesting project out of the LA office with Google. This was the Google Art Project. So I just have slides here, but you maybe recall when this was out, which is simply a mashup of web information and museum painted, famous museums, art museums, and being able to move around them with Street View. So it was kind of a rejiggering of Street View to work inside there, and you could navigate around in the space. So this shows an example of what it was like in there to kind of move around. So you could experientially see what it was like to be inside the space, but also very high resolution. In fact, you could experience the paintings much better resolution than you could actually at an actual museum. Just stay at a distance. You could zoom far into these and look at great detail on them. So it allowed people to see very famous museums that maybe weren't able to travel at that point. So multiplicity, this is something that's core to me about the future experience of digital. And if you look at how consumption of media happens with the younger audience, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. In fact, I consume this way as well, and I'm not that young. But basically, it's some examples I want to show you of like experiments with combining web information from the internet and showing that on your television at the same time. So we did quite a bit of work actually with here in UK with it was called Cameras at the time. This is the development of what's UView from BBC, kind of the BBC, ITV, and the other players. This is showing, notice the stuff that's bubbling up on the right-hand side. The idea here was that when you went through the guide, if you focus on a channel, you're on BBC News, you have a quick access to the primary things, which in this case would be the website for BBC. It's a simplified version. This is probably closer to the mobile version of their site, a simple version that could play while you're doing, the idea is you're doing two things at once. How many of you, when you watch television, at least some of the time, have an iPad or a phone in front of you? Hands here. I mean, it's so common, and believe it or not, I've seen some research. It's even further along in the United States. I mean, most of the people have something there. I can't watch TV without my laptop here. I have it set up in my dining room with the TV over there, so I'm always doing something. Not always related to what's going on, but it's there. So this is the previous one was with BBC. This is looking at a system that we did with Orange. in Paris, a TV system. But again, it's that sense of space. You see that pushback thing, create a space, bring some stuff in. What's important in that experience is the rich experience, the thing that we've all seen in iOS pioneered it, I mean, for mobile devices. If you look carefully what's going on there, the reason that the audience likes that a lot is that it's very smooth animation, highly responsive. Things are animating, things fade up, fade down. That sort of beauty of how it moves and comes onto the screen and the transitions is a part of the experience. And I would say, in that case, that the interface is the brand. I mean, we think of that when we think of Apple, not only just the nice-looking products. So this particular example is another kind of hybrid example, an experiment we did with Microsoft Xbox, Sci-Fi Channel, and VU Games, who was designing the game. This is for Battlestar Galactica. But we produced a version where what you just saw there was that at a point, while you're watching the show, if there's it's like the game, so we could actually start playing the game. We're watching this with an Xbox controller in front of us. So you could actually experience this thing for a moment. So I really like the idea of like plunging the audience, in that case, into something that's a digital experience, kind of a hybrid one right there. So. Now that's leading to something that I've worked quite a bit with, from going way back, maybe 8 years, with the idea of gesture. And to me, gesture, which I think it's made huge advances with Connect. I mean, it's shown an interest in the audience. I still think it's a new technology. The cameras need to be, the motion cameras need to be higher resolution. I think that's all getting better. We're looking at things that are coming along like Leap and some other things. So I think that industry is looking to get higher resolution so we can really do really interesting work with gesture. But again, it maps. This is a system that we had done. We designed this 7 years ago. This is working with PrimeSense, who's the company who integrated their technology into, it was brought into Connect. And this is a system that worked 7 years ago. You could just, I like the idea there's no remote. You just sort of navigate with your hand across the system. So. That actually has application. Here, this is just a quick glimpse of the menu system. Again, a main thing, flick to the left, access a menu system that you navigate with your hands to find something that you want to look at. So let's jump to the interaction space. Essentially, the things that I've been talking about are really in that content space. They're really not fully, they sort of simulated there. So the part that I want to talk about now is how can we take that and move it out into that space in front of us. And by the way, we're already doing that. The audience is already doing it. When you use a tablet or a mobile device, you've got the TV back there, you're in that space over here. I'm navigating with an iPad over here, looking at stuff. That's now this sort of new space in front of there. An example of sort of spatial applications, this is an application for an iPad that we designed for the Orange project that was looking at being able to, sort of a magazine thing. You could look at the different shows and navigate across fluidly to get lots and lots of information. Across the bottom you can see you're accessing all kinds of, the typical Twitter, Facebook, and some other, but a kind of a selection of things that you could do with that to get more information. So in terms of looking at beyond the screen, which is something like this, how do we take that information, like interface, and pull it out on the screen? Let's pull up our glasses there. And by the way, the right way to hold them is with the right hand and look at them. So you're looking at that little language that says Sitecore and hold it like this. So using the idea of bringing interface into the space, I'm using this to show you what that would look like. So if we were watching a game, and this is Need for Speed, for example. You stop that, but we're in a 3D system, we could wave our hand, and the interface comes out into the room, and you could sort of navigate it with your hand. You go down, 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 up, down, down, down. Click things like that. So those are notifications. So you pause the game, pick up a notification, and address it. For television, something very simple, like you're watching a program, and you pull it out, and here's a list of kind of tailored to you. So you move it across with your hand, you reach over, you touch that one over there, and it changes the channel. So those actions of like navigating and changing could be really simple. Another example, this is I like this one. This is apropos to our location here. There's a Champions League actually watching. So the stuff that's coming in here is from the Champions League site. There's just something going on in the code that takes the background out and displays this so we can navigate it. But we're just the idea is to bring it into the same space. So rather than have to look up and down between a second screen, we're actually able to bring that into the line of sight through different types of technology. The last example is a true AR one. This maybe looks to the future where maybe this is the evolution of Google Glass. So we're watching Coronation Street here, and notice the space, but we wave in stuff again from the Coronation Street website, and we reach over, maybe we touch one of the characters, we're interested in that, and so touch something else, maybe over there we touch the news one that brings up that news stuff, and then we sort of, when we're done, we just sort of wave it out, and it goes out like that. So that is the end of the 3D bit. But what I'm trying to do there is I'm not espousing that we're going to use red, blue glasses and do this. I'm just trying to give you a little sense of some of the things that we're actually developing and looking at, this is down the road, about bringing the web experience combined with the TVs, with another screen, which is an interesting idea. So the thing I wanted to point out is that brands have been, I've worked for much of my career with television and particularly television. Brands are in control, meaning the brands of an array of brands. If I'm watching this on my Virgin Media, that there's a Virgin Media brand that's an aggregator with their set of controls. There are the various brands, the channels that are in there, and there are rules about how you can put something else against something else because there's a sponsor on this one and there's a sponsor on that one, and all of the rules and regulations. There's a lot of them over there. But notice when someone is using it, if that's me and I'm using my iPad, I'm accessing the open internet. I can go to whatever I want. No one says to me, you can't do this, you can't put next to that. So the rules are different in this new coming space out here. And in that conversation about second screen devices, it's a different conversation about how brands work with customers. So basically, I see it as a new frontier. So if you look at this space kind of from the side, through the television has been a great deal of brand control. Over here, it's viewer control. At the end of the day, that's what's going on over here. And just to kind of take that into a little bit further into an interesting space, we've done some very interesting work with BMW. And if you look at a car, particularly the future car, which may have more things as head-up display in the screen, is like an AR, it's an augmented reality device, and we're able to bring in things. So those are actually shown a glimpse of, possibly, this is the new visionary car. We worked with BMW on inside screens in this car, which is the I-Series, and some other interesting ideas, really beautiful kind of concepts for how what the experience is inside the car. But I wanted to show you this particular slide here. This is from, you can go to their website. This is all from BMW, but if you look there, you can see the gentleman getting into the car. And what they're showing in this visionary piece is that in the future, using different means, you'll be able to see the stuff in the scene there that's around us, information that we need. It's interesting that they're showing it from that view looking back. And there you see the information there, because I've done so much work with television entertainment, and I always say that like a bad interface, nobody's going to die from that. But when you design for a car while you're driving something, and the care and interest and safety of how you put something carefully planned on the screen is a huge issue, and done wrongly, you could die from it. So that makes a whole different kind of level of intensity for this. Some standards that seem to be developing on screen, which apply both to the web and otherwise, is on television, a lot of them introduce themselves from a menu system from the left. And a lot of systems are introducing apps, this new world, this second world, from the right. This is just a glimpse, some work, this is some work from Time Warner in the US. But notice that stuff coming in from the left. over there on that side, just an example of that. I put this screen up just as a general screen. I mean, many, many websites, not so much something that even what we saw today, like the beautiful one from HSBC, which lays it out this way and going up and down. But there has been a tradition in sites to place information on the left, content in the middle, and then extra related things on the right, which kind of maps somewhat to some of these other things. So I'm putting this just that we've been looking at that to see what in these various various devices and places for digital activity, are there trends developing that could be brought into, if we're looking at something where an audience takes that and moves from place to place, what happens and is it similar on both of those? I want to talk, and the last thing is really about channel idea. I've been so fascinated with the word channel coming from television because it's a foundational principle. We're used to going to different channel means there's a kind of branded content and a system that's on that channel. So what I've been looking at in an interactive world, is it possible to make that a truly dynamic experience so that maybe a channel is something different, where a channel that I would see is different one that you would see. And it's a collection of things the way we normally consume. If this is a grid of all the channels, I don't just watch one thing. I watch that. Can we take that and create this new channel, which has, a smaller version of branding and other things, but it's a systematic system. And also, I've dreamed about the fact that can this be a dynamic flow? This is not maybe the YouTube thing where you stop and go. It can actually flow and create something that you let it go, which is a great TV experience. And I've also been looking after being in television for a long time, you've got these basic elements. You've got the content, you have branding that's in there. I've done years designing branding for networks, the little graphical pieces that show the logos or whatever that is to give you a sense of what that brand is. Sponsorship and advertising. And promotion. I mean, all of these networks want to promote little promotional things that promote the coming programs to get eyeballs there. So a concept here is, let's say in some new world that through metadata, we're able to look at a dynamic channel in front of us. I turn on the TV, there's something dynamically created, a system that knows a lot about me and applies those factors carefully placed in there, both the branding, the other things. So when I start watching, it's built out in front of me like that. But let's say I stop there, and as a sort of interstitial, I saw a promo. So I click that promo, and I'm making a change. At that point, it rebuilds everything in front of it. So everything is dynamically being built. This is not the current channel system that's linear built, but can it do this? And can it have all those beautiful fluid elements that we see going from branding to advertisement to little sting to something else? All of that can be crafted inside of this. That's a dream I've had. So, and we've done some progress, and I actually thought that when Flipboard first came out, it has a little bit of that in there. I mean, in a sense, where Flipboard combines based on parameters of my friends in Twitter or whatever, it collects things together. So there's a selection of things. So some last principles that I've gleaned from working in the business. One of them is the absolute importance of rapid visualization. And somebody said, I think it was the first speaker, where you were, but talked a lot about the fact that we need to visualize things, and we need to create prototypes and rapidly visualize. So one of the things that I'm doing, for example, you may find this bizarre, but I use this is shown right now. This presentation is shown in Keynote, the Apple Keynote. I've been using Keynote. It has great little animation things for really simple things to kind of do the motions which occur most of the time in television and even in the iPad work. So I've been using that to build really quick prototypes, and it just speeds up the whole process. So I'm constantly looking for the ways where we make things. I want to show you an example of that. Here's a sketch. This was done in Keynote, rapidly built, a little sketch of something. But the point of this was to show the client how you could fluidly kind of take your hand and move things around like this, take it and move it across, and and build a little bit of dimension. But that little test was done quite rapidly, and that's really important to the process to be able to have many iterations done. key principle for us, and for every project that we do, is about what I would call now and next. We design and understand what is here for now, but we also design a prototype, a constantly changing prototype of what we know. Is it 2 years out or 1 year out? We have to be thinking about that because it affects what we're doing now. And it means that you're not doing a constant redesign, but instead you're building something that can modularly change and adapt. So that looking at the next thing is really important. I added nextism as an idea based on the first speaker who had the nowism. This is the nextism. So there we go. So I would also say that user testing is profound and great, but don't overthink things. I mean, I think that we've seen, I mean, particularly when the younger audience that uses multiple devices, there's a quite random and bespoke way that people use things, and it's hard to sort of craft it and say, well, they're going to do this. Let's create these brilliant user journeys. Here's this, and here's this, and don't they look beautiful? And then you actually test the product when it's out there, and somebody uses it completely different than you thought. So we're dealing with an audience who's quite, the younger audience in particular in the future, that just drifts around and does what they want with it, no matter what we think it could do. Also, the new design team. I think another dream I have is designing what I call an Uber design team that really is cross-media. It means that rather than having this siloed, here's a mobile group, design group, and here's a web group, and here's a television group, and here's something else, can we design a single design team? And I have some of my designers are like this, that understand all of that. So you're designing the initial behaviors, like responsive design. Somebody designs that single idea for how it can work across multiple devices. But it really means bringing that together into a different kind of design than we're used to. And then how do we train people for that? Innovation is not an option, in my opinion. It's a brand requirement. And the last thing I'll say is no silos. Thanks.